The most surprising stat for the November numbers in 2024 was one sector of the market went up 140% when it comes to sales. Let's break down some of the details from the November stats, what's coming here in December, which is a material change, especially for Toronto real estate. And let's talk about how the condo market is actually in two separate markets within itself. I'm Michael Ouzas. I'm a realtor here in Toronto. Click on that like and subscribe button. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. We still have a couple weeks left. If you ever want to book in a call to discuss what exactly is happening on the ground level of Toronto real estate, click on that first link in the description down below. The stats for November came out and they're relatively consistent with the month of October. However, there's a couple things that happened during the month of November that are super important as we trend through the end of the year and into the holiday season, prepping for what might be one of the biggest spring markets we have seen in quite some time. Jumping into the Greater Toronto area, and the media loves talking about the Greater Toronto area, even though it calls it Toronto. If we look at where things are at from a year ago, we're seeing prices up about, give or take, 2.5%, basically up about $30,000-$40,000 from where things were at this time of last year. And if you remember, last year at this time, interest rates were almost 2% higher from where they are today, which affects buying power significantly. We did see active listings come up 30% and total number of sales up 40%. If we go through the city of Toronto, pretty much the same numbers across the board. But as we take a look at the monthly sales data, as you know, going through these videos, the months of inventory is what we're watching heading into the holidays. And I do anticipate we'll see that number get lower, especially as listings that are currently on the market start to pull off the market for the holidays. In November, we had just under 22,000 active listings, just under 6,000 sales, which brings us to about 3.71 high threes for months of inventory, which is a balanced market across the board. Properties are usually taking about 30 days to sell. And again, that average price, 1.1 million, which is up from last year. However, it's down from October of this year. So we did see that tail end of the fall market in October. And in November, we haven't seen a ton of great listings hit the market across the board through the month. So we are seeing a lot of the good inventory that's still left over from the fall market start to get absorbed here. Interest rates have been quite the talk for the year. And if we look at where things were back in May, we've seen quite the drop off on the variable side of interest rates. Fixed rates have also come down quite a bit. And if we're looking year over year, we're down about 2% across the board, which is playing a big role as we move forward. One thing for pricing that's really stood out as we've gone through this is that the peak of the market was in February and March of 2022. We saw a huge drop off in pricing as interest rates started climbing up basically at that time in the early spring of 2022. Prices came down to around 1.1 million. And as we just mentioned, for the average price right now in Greater Toronto area, we've been trending relatively sideways for the better part of almost 3 years heading into 2025. Even through the ups and downs of interest rates, we've seen prices go up, we've seen prices come down, but still hovering around that $1.1 million mark. There is a couple notable changes coming into effect on December the 15th. And here's the first one. If we're looking at the difference between the minimum down payment and the 20% down payment required to purchase a property, before December 15th, you would have to put down 20% on any purchase at $1 million or above. If you're purchasing for $999,999, you could put down the minimum down payment, which is just below about $75,000. As of December 15th, 2024, that new minimum down payment that you need to put down on $1 million is $75,000, which is $125,000 less of a minimum down payment. This chart shows the minimum down payments required basically in $100,000 increments. And if you were to put down 20%, what that looks like across the board. Taking a look from the 1 million to 1.5 range, and this is where things really will get interesting as we go along. We are seeing the minimum down payment decrease by at least $125,000. And at the 1,499,999, we're looking at $175,000 difference in the minimum down payment. I know there's been a lot of rumblings of how there will be mortgage insurance added to the mortgage. And those are true. You will be adding mortgage insurance to your mortgage. However, if you're looking to get into the freehold market, and this is where I think this is going to have a huge effect when it comes to semi-detached properties in the city of Toronto, not having to save up that full $240,000 versus $95,000 on a $1.2 million property is a significant difference. The next piece of the change is that if you are a first-time buyer, you can also get a 30-year amortization on your first purchase. So if you were putting down less than 20%, historically, you could not get a 30-year mortgage. You'd have to get a 25-year mortgage. Whereas now for first-time buyers, that rule will change as of December 15th, 2024. I love showing this chart because it does show the difference and price gap between the average condo condo and the average freehold house. If we take a look, this number for the Greater Toronto area is somewhere around $700,000 difference. And if we look specifically for the city of Toronto, the detached market, just under 2,000 active listings in the month of November and about 681 sales, which brings us to about 2.9 months of inventory. And remember that number 2, if we are below 2 months of inventory, that's when we really see the offer dates and things really pick up when it comes to pricing. Now, pricing's down month over month, but ahead of where things were in September and August and even July, which were relatively slow months across the board. October was a hot month for detached freehold properties. And at that 2.8 months of inventory, we'll still see competition there because the best properties in that segment will generally always get traction in the city of Toronto. If we look at semi-detached properties, and as mentioned, this is one of the hottest segments in the market, we have been seeing a 2 months of inventory. The best properties in the best locations that are well renovated are still selling today, and they're selling at a premium. We have been seeing multiple offers on the ground level for these properties, especially when they're well renovated. And this is something that I do anticipate continuing into the new year, especially if you're looking for areas like Roncy, Leslieville, Lower West Village, the Danforth. Those pockets of the city always remain in high demand, especially for renovated semi-detached properties. And if you add parking, that's a big factor, especially looking for those properties in the city. Jumping over to townhouses, and this is another segment of the market that will get some more attention with the new mortgage rules. 2.78 months of inventory, just under 3. It still remains pretty competitive. And if you look at the entire city of Toronto, there were under 200 listings for townhouses. 69 sales. We did see prices come back about $100,000. And this is one of those segments where the townhouses are so different between each other. You may get the bigger ones that are 3 stories and basically as big as a semi-detached house, or you also have smaller ones that may not be quite as big, or maybe they're 1 or 2 bedrooms. So quite a difference when it comes to townhouse properties, but that average price is in that low 1 millions, which will get competitive here as we continue into the new year. Now, looking at condos, and this is one of the biggest things, that if we take a look at the detached prices, which were just under 1.7 million, condos at just over 700,000, we have almost $1 million price gap between the two property types, which I do feel will be significant going into the new year. One thing we have been seeing with condos is inventory has been starting to pull back. Properties that have been sitting on the market, maybe they've now been rented out or they've been removed for the holiday season. We have 5,300 active listings, which is the lowest we've seen in a few months. However, we did see a good amount of sales for the month of November, 1,127 sales. Only October was ahead by about 30-40 sales. 4.75 months of inventory is the lowest months of inventory we've seen in quite some time for the condo market. Again, that average price just over 710,000 and that $1 million price gap between. The next piece about condos is that we actually have a tale of 2 markets within the condo market. If you look at this chart right here, and this is from Urbanation, 140% difference in month over month change for condo apartments over the $2 million mark. And I know that may sound surprising, but there are plenty of condos in the city of Toronto over that $2 million mark. And for downsizers who are looking for prime locations and a big space. So if you think about a big space at anywhere between $1,000 and $1,400 a square foot, depending on the location, if you're looking at a 2,000 square foot condo, which if you're coming from a house into a condo as a downsizer, that's where this market segment still remains very hot in the city of Toronto. 140% is no slouch when it comes to month over month change. And even in the 1.75 to 199 million, also a very hot segment. Looking at the $1 million mark, 60% month over month change. This is where I do feel we are in 2 markets for the condo market. And I've been in competition with buyers looking for bigger properties, great views, great location. Those properties are getting attention, especially if they're priced well here on the market in Toronto. And we're seeing a difference between those properties that have great layouts and great locations and also a great view. So if you think of trying to check all the boxes on your wish list, we are seeing those properties which have a lot of those features, and they've come down in pricing quite a bit from where they were even a year or 2 ago. Those properties are still getting tons of attention out there. The properties at the lower price points, and we're seeing a lot of them on the market and they've been sitting on the market. Those properties that maybe are smaller, maybe 1-bedroom layouts, are not quite getting the same attention as the bigger 2-bedroom units. So that's where we do have 2 markets going on within the condo market. And I guess a third segment we could add is a loft style condo. And those condos, speaking of condos in Toronto CO1, so we're west of Yonge Street, 1,329 active listings, 243 sales. So we're seeing sales relatively consistent for the last few months. Back in May, we had 5.85 months of inventory. And now in November, just around 5.5 months of inventory. Looking at COH, COA, which is east of Yonge, 6.9 months of inventory, a little bit more than what we saw in October, but significantly less than September, which is at 10 months of inventory. Not a ton of sales in September in COA, which is Yonge to the DVP, Bloor down to the water. Those are the stats. And I do have a bit of an unpopular opinion when it comes to searching for a condo right now. And that opinion is the condos that are getting demand in even a slower condo market are the condos that arguably you want to buy if you are looking to get into the condo market. And the reason I say that is a condo that continues to get competition, even in a slow condo market, will always get competition, especially in the hotter markets. It is a bit of an unpopular opinion because there is a lot of choice out there. And by no means does that mean only go and search for condos that are in bidding wars. However, if you can find those condos that are in demand and you know that they're getting attention even in slower markets, those are the type of condos that really hold their value over time. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below on what you thought of these stats and where you think things will go as the new mortgage rates come into play. I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.